Hello, welcome to Insights in Action with Orange 142, where we interview agency leaders and business owners to uncover the journeys, the strategies, and the insights that drive their success. At Orange 142, we're all about transforming brand stories into impactful digital experiences through innovative media and marketing solutions. And today I'm lucky to be joined by Randy Smith of Synchronicity. How's it going, Randy?
It's going great. It's going great. I couldn't ask for a better time of year and better day. How's that?
Yeah. You are in my probably my favorite state in the US. You're in North Carolina, right?
We're based in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's correct.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's next to my favorite city in the US, which is Asheville, North Carolina. I love that city.
Asheville is amazing. We have a whitewater rafting client that's just north of Asheville and Marshall.
Oh, that's awesome.
So oftentimes we've taken the team over there for trips down the river.
Yeah. I had my first fall experience, I think, because I'm from the West Coast. We don't really, especially from Arizona originally, we don't really get a fall where the leaves change all too much. So my first time was in Lake Lure where the leaves were changing and I loved it. I thought it was awesome. So I lived in Raleigh for 3 months and that's where, I began to love it. But I would love to learn a little bit more, just to start this off, a little bit more about your background. I know you've got a background being a musician. I'd love to hear about that. And also a little bit more about your agency, Synchronicity.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I go where I'll just jump in, I've had three careers, three really what I would call careers at this point, but this being the best one so far.
Mhm.
But I started off as a professional musician, quit college when I was 19 years old, moved to Springfield, Massachusetts, slept in my car for 6 months, ate macaroni and cheese and hot dogs and did the whole thing. And ended up putting together a really great band called 8084. And this was back in 1982. And then we ended up being signed by CBS Records in Canada in 1987 and started working on a project up there. And then, unfortunately, the keyboard player, who was also the business leader of the band, was killed in a car accident.
Oh man.
Uh, after a while, the project just fluttered. And we went from there and out the door. The record label said, "You're a great tax write-off." But I stuck with it for a few more years. Then at that point, I had had my daughter, and my ex-wife at this point had said, you really should get a real job. So look at this job, honey. They have benefits and you can work during the day. So that was selling door-to-door insurance.
Mm.
And you want to talk about the worst job of my life? That was absolutely it. But I also learned a lot about people and how to sell, as well as made a ton of money, and I was really surprised. But I ended up being recruited by Aflac.
Mm.
And I was there when the Duck came aboard. And with them, I was a sales trainer and you know, was there for about 3 or 4 years. And then I stumbled on the internet and got my first computer, had Windows 3.1, and my brother had created a website for the band. And I said, I want to change it. He said,
Mm.
here's some software, a Dreamweaver, and go get it, Tiger. And I broke the site. So, of course, I had to figure out how to fix it. And upon doing that, I was like, I really like doing this.
Yeah.
And I found myself spending more time staying at home working on the website and doing that type of thing than actually going to my office and doing my management or training positions. So I ended up quitting Aflac in 1998 and I started the agency. I went back to school. I took a course to become a webmaster that in 1998 at a school that was in Vermont. And I dropped a $5,000 check down and said, okay, start teaching me. And I started learning. And then I started the agency at that point, just out of the blue.
Wow.
And took a risk. And here I am today, 27, 28 years later.
Wow, that's cool. And I feel like we have so much to talk about. I come from the agency sales side myself, having been a sales trainer and doing all that stuff. So I love talking sales. And it's really cool that you got your start in door-to-door sales. There's this like I feel like 1 month of door-to-door sales equals 1,000 cold calls, maybe even more, because you get such quick feedback and it is a real sink or swim type situation. I started off my door-to-door sales, like that's how I started off. I sold paint, like painting, house painting door to door. And
Sure.
man, like you got to get good when you're getting the door slammed in your face over and over again, right?
Yeah, it's certainly a blow to the ego if you have one at that point, and then you
Yeah.
realize, okay, am I going to continue to do this or am I going to give up? And part of me was like, oh no, I'm going to figure this out and give it some time. And then I just learned,
Mhm.
how to approach the situation and how to, kind of get people, I wouldn't say off track, but just, you have them listen to you and not feel threatened by you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then getting in the door, that was always the hardest part. How do you get in the door?
Always, yeah.
So
I figured out that if I would sprint from door to door, not only would I get through a lot more houses in time, but I would be so out of breath by the time I reached the next door, and I'd be kneeling and people would answer and just be so like it was such a pattern interrupt, right? People would be like, what is this college kid? I have my college shirt on, and they'd be like, what is this kid doing? And then I'd like get into my thing and they're like, oh, it's just a college kid. Yeah, let me help him. And that's, it worked, right?
I've
It's just
done,
little
I've
things like
done,
that.
I've done plenty of things like that. Like I had snow fall on my head and they answer the door and go, oh, I'm getting soaked out here. And they, well, come right in. So you learn how to do these
Yeah.
types of things. And then you still have to convince them that, you want to sell them something. But
Yeah.
I think people, if you treat them nicely and you don't feel too salesy, they'll usually listen.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the biggest thing. And so you guys, I mean, you have over 25 years in the digital marketing industry, specifically synchronicity. I'm sure you guys have witnessed some significant changes. I mean, what are some of the most impactful transformations that you guys have observed, and how has synchronicity adapted to stay ahead in, such a dynamic field?
Well, it's not easy. So anyway, back in when, like I said at the beginning, Windows 3.1, when we started building websites, then there was no such thing as a smartphone. I mean, I had one of those flip big, phones that you see in movies now. But so you were only building them static for a desktop computer, and laptops had not come out at that point.
Mhm.
So it was a little easier because you only had one screen size to worry about. But from there, when the phones started coming out, you had to start adapting to responsive design, which is a game changer. You have to kind of stay on board and just continue to learn and go. It's not an industry where you can stop. Once you jump on the train, you either keep riding or you fall off, one of the two.
Mhm.
And I think just knowing myself as a human, I enjoy doing it. It never feels like work for me.
Yeah.
And so I found something I can make money at and work at. But I think, I always wanted to get better at it. I don't like to lose sales. I don't like to not be able to do things. I think learning is part of life. And if you stop learning, you kind of stop growing. So it was something like that that kept me going. But over the years, I mean, then responsive design came in. And then actually back then, there was no such thing as digital marketing per se. You didn't, with search engines, you could just throw a bunch of keywords in the footer and hide them with, make them invisible with the same color as the background. And, that was search engine marketing. But over the years, I saw at the point where we were strictly doing a lot of custom web work, I realized I saw it coming and it was kind of like, we have to make this shift into at least doing half and half, developing custom projects, but also keeping them in the door and
Yeah.
retaining them as a client by providing digital marketing and handing it off to that. So that's where we started at doing that. And now it's really funny. It's changed a lot. We're probably about, I would say 65% digital marketing is what we do, and then the other piece being custom design. But
Huh.
even that's starting to change a little bit because you can
Interesting.
make your own website anywhere. It's
Yeah.
not going to be professionally made per se, and it may not have user personas or UX involved with it, but you can at least do that. But you can't market it without understanding of the theories of how everything works.
Yeah. And so now that, I mean, after this long, you guys have probably got a good idea of who you work with best. Who do you typically work with?
Yeah, it's a great question. Healthcare companies, not B2B companies, that financial companies, industrial companies, manufacturing. We have a quite a lot in over the years, and they're still with us. Companies that manufacture truck brakes or lidar, big equipment sensors, robotic sensors, things like that. So we a little bit of that, a little bit of financial, a little bit of healthcare and that type of thing. Another thing too is we've done some work with some nonprofits, and one of the very large, well-known ones that we work with, provide them both web support and marketing is Girls on the Run, which is a national organization, and most towns have a chapter of Girls on the Run. But they're an amazing client to work with, and
Yeah.
I think one of the things we've learned along the way is, every agency is going to lose clients. It's just going to happen.
Yeah.
And, every client isn't a good match for your agency. And
Mm.
that's one of the best things to learn is to be able to understand that and not take on any work. But we've developed it to where we can retain clients for, I mean, we have clients that have been with us 15 years. The average is probably, actually, we have two clients that have been with us for about 15 years. And then, the average is probably about 6, 7 years. Uh,
Wow.
so we're,
That's amazing.
yeah, well, we've learned how to, I think we've learned how to really get results for people and focus on doing the work. And I've noticed that a lot of projects will take over that the people just aren't doing the work. They
Yeah.
say they're doing the work, but marketing, SEO is such a deep black hole to most people
Mm.
that, they don't know if you're doing the work or not. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, the results, is
Hmm.
really where we're at. So if you're not getting people results, you're failing. And that's what it comes down to. So, I
And
think we stick to that and we share it with the clients that's
yeah,
our,
and within that, I mean, do you guys focus on small, medium, large? Like where do you guys kind of fall within that?
medium, I would say
Yeah.
medium companies, some smaller companies. I mean, most of the companies that we work with are, obvious, 6, 7 figure companies work with. And even that's maybe a little low, but we're not because we do custom work and because I've been doing this for so long and we have great developers and, the team I work with, the first developer I ever worked with, he's been with me 25 years and we're still working together. We charge a little bit more than, a freelancer or so forth. And so the projects, if somebody comes to us looking for, hey, what's the best price you can give me for a 5-page brochure website? That's not our niche. Ours is somebody that comes to us and says, I need to get results. I need to, I'm investing all this money. I'm not getting return on ROI back on it, or somebody that has a complex web design project.
Hmm.
And those are the clients that we best work with, things like that. But
Yeah.
with marketing, you have to, we won't take a website project less than 10 grand. And that's not, I know that's pretty low, but I think that's a sweet spot because most of the companies that we work with end up being, 50, 60, $100,000 clients or more.
Yeah. Wow. And so, as both a creative professional and a business leader, you've managed to blend artistic vision with strategic marketing. How do you balance both of these facets in your work at Synchronicity, and how does that integration, really benefit your clients?
I have no idea. But, I think I've been an entrepreneur other than working as an employee for Aflac, and doing that.
Mhm.
Even that is subcontracted, believe it or not. They don't have actual employees and
Oh,
salespeople are
really? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
interesting. But the door-to-door was employee. I've always been an entrepreneur, ever since I was a kid, and so I always was used to making my own money and trying to figure things out. And when you get into a band and you're trying to make a living at that, I mean, there's no strict rules of how to do that. So you just have to, we used to use the P.V. Burnham techniques, just make a big show and make it seem bigger than life. So when you get into marketing, I think the creative aspects is I came from being a songwriter. And I
Mm,
think building a website is very similar to
mm,
writing a pop song. There's a hook.
mhm.
You create the song and there's a hook. And the hook is what captures people and brings them in. And then, the rest of it goes from there. But I think, looking at it in those terms, it was always easy for me to keep going. But I think what the biggest piece of what's allowed me to get here is I've had some great people I've worked with. I've had some great employees. I have great employees right now. I think right now I'd have to say I have my best team I've ever had because of the synergy in between people and they get along and they have similar interests and they're respectful of each other. But I've had some super people that have brought much much more talented than I could ever be that have worked with us. And I think, I've learned from them and they've learned from us and they've helped us get to where we are today.
Wonderful. Wow. You have such an interesting life and such an interesting agency. It's been really nice to hear about it, Randy. I mean, where can people find out more about you and where can people find out more about your agency?
Absolutely. They can go to syncdesigns.com because if there was one thing I would ever learn and to never do again, I don't know what I was thinking calling a company synchronicity back then because no one can spell it.
Yeah.
So they can go to syncdesigns.com, which is SYNC designs, plural, just like it sounds, syncdesigns.com, or they can, drop us an email there. We're on Facebook and all the nice channels. We seem to focus a lot on LinkedIn.
Mm,
But just do a search for Synchronicity Web Designs and we'll pop up. I'm sure we will.
great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on. This is great.
I appreciate it. No, a lot of fun. And you're very good at your job also. You make it
Thank
easy to
you.
talk. So thank you.